Well, it's here. Guys, this has been beyond a blast. It's been an opportunity of a lifetime. These last 2 years have really been very special, and I want to start by thanking Stephanie for making that call and having faith in me, to be here these 2 years and share my thoughts on what has been a spectacular set of cattle. I can't imagine, any greater an honor than having been out here in both of these arenas the last 2 years to just put together and talk about, describe, and give you my breakdown on what has been just a pretty phenomenal set of livestock. And so my thanks again, Stephen, to your group and those the powers that be that make those decisions, because it has really been it has been one of the greatest honors of my life from a judging standpoint. So I really appreciate that. Give Stephen and his crew a round of applause, if you would, and thank him. Yeah, I guess the last thing before we select our champions, I guess I guess I have a message that I hope to leave a little bit, and just some thoughts, and I guess I'm gonna start it with a word, and the word is perfect. And I probably in my lifetime, there's been people that have referred to me in some way, shape, or form as a bit of a perfectionist. I'm sure there's many of you that sit in this building right now that probably could tack that onto yourself as well, because I don't know that you compete at this level without having a little bit of that in you. And these young people are going to grow up having a little bit of that in them as well. And yet, I guess the message that I want to leave you with is, what is perfection? What is perfect? How do we define that? And I think too often in this world, I feel so blessed. One of the reasons I tell you I'm blessed to judge this show is because I'm at a point in my life where I now have 3 children, and I have a whole different perspective, probably on life in general. And I think it's important as parents, as mentors around this ring right now, that we help these young people to learn what that word means. And I think too often in competition, we have a tendency to dwell on the opposite and look for the world's imperfections, or in many cases we call them failures. And I'm not so sure that they're always failures. I've shared this story before, but I recall vividly making my first trip to a national show with my younger brother and our family. And I can recall like it's yesterday, being in the first class of the day, and that judge pulling me in first, or pulling me out of the lineup first. And eventually coming to find out that I was standing last. And, in that moment, it could have been perceived as failure. It could have been perceived as imperfection. And I'll tell you, it's one of the greatest things that ever happened to my brother and I. Because we didn't treat it that way. We watched the rest of the show. We wanted to know more. We wanted to learn more. We were just 2 kids from Maryland that did not have a clue. And we were so happy to have people in our lives that helped us to figure those things out. And I guess my point is that perceived failure, that perceived imperfection, maybe it led to something else down the line. And I know how competitive it is, and I know how many young people walk into this ring with pressure from parents and other people around them, because the competition is so high. But when they walk out of this ring, I hope you'll help them to learn the lessons that need to come from this as well. And, in this world today, for whatever reason, as we went from one generation to another, we've had a tendency to look at all and take all the negatives in this world and point them out. instead of praising the greatness. And I think about my experience these last 2 days, my experience for these last 2 years for that matter. And I can think of two things that happened yesterday in this show. Some of you were probably here during the lightweight crosses. There's a young man who stood 11th in his class yesterday. Probably the most special young person to come through this ring. And in a moment, the hardest pull I've probably had in my life was to leave that young person in 11th, and this place erupted for that young man. And it was a moment of what many might have seen as 11th place in imperfection. And I think every one of these guys out here with me would tell me that was one of the most perfect moments that you could have ever given us in this ring. There was also a young person yesterday that stood second in class. And when pulled second, the tears started pouring. And, probably for many of you right now, you think the tears were coming down because they stood second instead of first. And it was exactly the opposite. The tears were pouring because that young person could not have been any happier than to maybe sail and be second in their class at the Fort Worth Stock Show. And for all the imperfections there are in this world, guys, that's perfect. I guess my challenge to you guys as leaders, as parents, as mentors for these young people is that you don't continue to point out the imperfections in their life. Instead, you help them to see how perfect this world can be for them. And you can help them to just continue to be a better person and know that life's going to throw you curveballs. And sometimes it's not going to be fair. And sometimes it's going to feel like failure. And, there's certain things that are just going to cause absolute heartbreak. There are things in this world that just sometimes don't have an answer. There's tragedies happening every day. But a cow show is not one of those tragedies. And I hope we all can appreciate how lucky we are, how perfect we're making these young people if we just allow ourselves to do it. And it's been exciting for me to be a part of that these last 2 years. These young people are amazing. You've got phenomenal cattle. I'm going to go select you my two favorite ones here in a second. But blow it up one time for the young people that are out here and give them a huge round of applause. Guys, this is, I'll leave you with one thought here. This is not easy. Sometimes we come back out to this and it's a foregone conclusion. It's not the case today. There are several breed champions that are very, very much in the hunt for these two slots. I'm going to leave here, and the thing that I've always told people that I've learned about judging is that no matter which ones you select, you can't make everybody happy because everybody has invested in this. But I'm going to sleep well tonight knowing that I picked the two that were my favorites. And, that's, to me, we can all argue over the differences in them. I hope we don't argue with two very, very important things. A, amazing young people, and B, what a heck of a lineup right there. Give them one more hand. I'm going to take one more look. We'll say Ladies and gentlemen, you just saw a little history. Your grand champion, junior steer, 2020 Fort Worth Stockbird Rodeo, the 124th edition, entry number 2236, Rider Day at FWSSR from Middle, Texas.
Ooh, no.
You did?
Really for puppets, I should bread. No. If you, oh my God.
And your reserve grand champion, entry number 712, Ron Holly Thomas 4H member from Gatesville, Texas.